Today's date is May 30th, 2026. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Nan, and I'm glad you're here for the Emotional Sobriety workshop today with two fantastic teachers, Herb Kagan and Joe Brooks. Herb is a longtime teacher of spiritual growth and recovery, known for making the steps practical, grounded, and usable in everyday life. He's been doing 12-step workshops for over 30 years and has 42 years of sobriety. I have been involved with Herb's workshops since 2018, and every time I go through his workshop, more is revealed. Joe is a recovery coach and teacher with a background in psychology and education. She blends 12-step recovery wisdom with practical parenting strategies, trauma, and ADHD informed tools. For me, she brings a calm, real world perspective to relationships and family life. And it's been a pleasure for me to get to know her over the last few years. Her workshop on grief helped me tremendously after my sister passed away 3 years ago. Please take a moment to check out Joe's upcoming Listening Within workshops on topics like codependency, anxiety, and more. If it's for you, have a look at listeningwithin.life, and I'm sure Steph will put that in the chat. Today we are gathered to focus on emotional sobriety. There are 4 workshops. The first one was February 28th, moving out of drama. Today's is when feelings feel like facts. August 22nd is staying connected, and November 14th, living in the practice. All right, let's get started, and I'm going to pass it on to Herb and Joe.
Well, thank you, Nan. My name is Joanne. Joe, I'm from Melbourne, Australia. It is wonderful to see your faces across the world. And I'm calling in early morning, and for some of you, it's evening. We normally start these workshops with a consideration, with a space where we open our heart and mind for learning, to become teachable, to open up our ideas for space. And for that, I'm going to take a moment and hand over to Herb.
What Joe's referring, my name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since 1984 and I've been awake since 1988, and a huge difference. And that's why we're doing this. It's a progressive improvement in consciousness as we thaw out. It's a wonderful metaphor, thawing out. It's progressive. This emotional sobriety began to be a reality for me in terms of understanding and being conscious of it when I was around 15 years sober. I was very awake in terms of the awakening process, but not conscious of emotional sobriety. It probably came into our conversations around the late 90s, early 2000s. One of the awakenings was precipitated by a step guide who suggested that I had a lot of information and I had a lot of transformation. And to the extent that I held on to that information and transformation and all those experiences at that time, which was about 10 years sober and 5 years awake. He said, as long as you hold on to that information and that experience, you're prevented from having any new information and or new experience. I mean, it was like another curtain parted. And because it made sense, and I hope it does, and maybe you've heard about the set-aside prayer, but I really want you to embrace the set-aside attitude. Prayer is a bunch of words in common language, but it's not really. Prayer is about intention. And Joe introduced us to having an open mind and open heart. And that's the intention. You've had a lot of vocabulary and a lot of understanding and a lot of experience, perhaps, with the 12 steps and or with self-help and or with psychology and or with therapy. Wonderful. Any combination or no combination at all. But here we are today. Emotional sobriety, at the heart of it, is about being conscious today. Being conscious of being conscious, even. And I'm going to, normally I would use a prayer in PowerPoint, but today I thought we would just be spontaneous. And I have a spontaneous set aside prayer that, in fact, I pray every morning. It's the only one I have ever, because it comes from my soul, from my heart, that I know by heart. I refer to the mystery currently as Holy Spirit. That name changes over time as my consciousness and or needs change. The reality underneath that doesn't change. Holy Spirit, release us from up till now. We're asking for spiritual intervention. Open our minds and open our hearts. Detach me from after now. Release me from up till now. Detach me from after now. Allow me to be fully present in this 2 hours, in the now. Allow me to be fully present, fully conscious, conscious of our consciousness in the present moment for the next hour. Amen. Joe?
Thank you, Herb. I was just breathing in and breathing out and finding my space here. My name is Joanne, and Herb is my step guide. He is my teacher and has been in that space in my heart for the last 17 years. And the reason I know that is my son is 17 years old. And I've had this journey of motherhood and this journey of finding balance. This emotional sobriety for me is the word balance. It's hard to be balanced in this world that drags us left and right and up and down. We're getting dragged by drama, chaos, fear, anxiety, anger. I'm pulled in all different directions, and I was pregnant and overwhelmed, and I got connected to Herb. And when I remember that connection, I still get emotional. This beautiful moment of he didn't know me, I didn't know him. He happened to be free, and he heard something in my voice, and we started an online telephone workshop that has been working ever since and grown and built into these Zoom calls and Zoom meetings. And it is precious and it is special, and this can be your journey too. It starts with one step. My background is, and Herb, we have different backgrounds. I have come from a background of anxiety, panic attacks, eating disorder diagnoses. I've had obesity, eating disorder, things going on. My first panic attack, I was 11 years old. I didn't tell anyone what was going on till I was 22, and then I started hospitals and different types of treatment for it. But between the ages of 11 and 22, I was having regular and intense panic, anxiety. So that was the power that pulled me through my life was this anxiety. So last workshop, we looked at the body. We looked at what happens with drama. What happens with chaos? What happens in our biology? Our body reacts, and I definitely identified with that. The excitement, the energy, the chaos uh, pulled me in one direction, and my life was chaos. I remember joking that when you open my wallet, every card in my wallet had a different address. Like I'd moved house so many times that nothing could keep up with. All my cards had different addresses, that all the furniture was nothing matched. They'd all been bought for different houses, and then I'd inherited them, and nothing was coordinated, and my life was chaos. And I was overwhelmed, and I couldn't bear it. And by 24, with all that medical knowledge, all that self-help, I couldn't bear another day. And at 24, when I didn't want to live another moment, I started a journey of studying the 12 steps. I don't identify with all of every fellowship, some of the things that can go on. I don't even identify with the fellowships where I do qualify. I go into those rooms and I'm not like them. I have a family who love me. Some people come from sadness and trauma. I have a history of trauma, by the way, I do. But I feel different sometimes, even when I walk into a room and people have a similar background. The message that held me was this first part. I couldn't stop the reactivity that was happening in my body. The anxiety for me was what I was powerless over. So I started changing the words of the steps. I'm powerless over my anxiety thinking, that my life has become unmanageable. Of course, I don't have, I can't, I never know where I'm going to wake up. One day I woke up and I thought, I'm going to get on the bus and go to Sydney. Now, you don't know where Sydney is, but it was a 13-hour. In fact, I didn't go to Sydney. I went to Brisbane because I'd never been there. It was 3 days on the bus. I did not even realize I was going to spend 3 days on a bus. Like I didn't, just no preparation. And this was the person I was living with. Chaos. So last time we came together, this is a series of 4. We looked at the physical impact. And I talked about fight, flight, freeze, fawn, a stress response. I'm going to come back to that. But today, our focus is more moving into our mind. So, how we tie these together, our body has a reaction. My anxiety, which is real, my fear, which is real, my nervous energy, which is real. These are real physical reactions. And I needed help and support and some knowledge and some changes in my lifestyle to support my body, which was allergic to a lot of things I was doing. So I needed some support. But what happens to me, what happens to a lot of us, is this next part, our mind. I created stories to explain why I was so nervous, why my body was so reactive. I created things, and that's more of what we're going to be talking about today. So I won't go there. I'm going to pause here, Herb. Do you want to say something to this slide here, please?
Yes, very definitely. And it's incumbent on you as the participants to piece the puzzles that both Joe and I will weave together for you in terms of what does it mean? How do you see the picture? Uh, we have a purpose, we have an experience, we have lots of information, but it'll be how you perceive it, how you process it, how you need it, that will make a difference here in terms of having an experience with it. If you've been in front of me at all, you know that I'm a seeker of knowledge and have been. I didn't realize, however, that seeking is wonderful, but finding is so much better. And Jo talked about her beginning of her process. Of course, we could talk the entire time, each of us, about our respective experiences, and it would be interesting and valuable, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to try to just drop little pieces into it to make sense of it as we're trying to, again, weave this tapestry of emotional sobriety, for you to both get a handle on some aspects of it, but also to have an experience, even today, to have an experience with it. I got sober in 1984, but I said I didn't wake up for 5 years. Now, I didn't know that I was asleep. I mean, literally, psychologically asleep, unconscious, and being driven by what Bill calls the bedevilments. Those are the unconscious stimuli that Joe was talking about, that I'm receiving from the outside, processing through the lenses that were warped. And I don't know that the lenses are warped because, in fact, those are the lenses through which I'm looking. I can't look at the lenses through which I'm looking until I met a man who taught me how to do that, to look at the lenses to see the distortions, to look at the lenses to see the delusions. It's embarrassing. At the very least, it's embarrassing to be able to see that you didn't see and to know that you didn't know, having taken pride on being the seeker and not realizing you weren't the finder until, in fact, you began finding and then you get over it down the road. It's like that dimmer switch. Light switch is one thing. That's what Bill Wilson had in the beginning. But he also had the dimmer switch experience. The big book written in 1939 doesn't mention emotional sobriety. In fact, it really only describes in step one addressing addiction, alcohol, ending on page 43. He never formally, structurally describes and talks about unmanageability in the sense of defining it. Now, he does define it, and those of you who have been exposed to Joe and myself know that on page 52, he talks about the bedevilments, the behavioral description of the emotional chaos that comes from the self-centeredness, the root of the problem, which he describes on pages 60 to 62. That unmanageability, restless, irritable, and discontent. And the point of this is that at 5 years of sobriety, I began to have the curtains part. I began to find a person who had the experience of a deep dive into step 4. It wasn't a complete dive by my understanding and experience, but of course I didn't know that at the time. I only know everything in retrospect as I look back over my shoulder. But in 1988-89, I was taken through a process that began revealing to me my dysfunctional motives. In column 4 of the resentment inventory, the corrupt motives that I had and the impact of my behavior on other people for the very first time. I mean, I'm 48, 50 years old, 5 or 7 years sober, and 20 years of therapy and self-help. And it was the very first time that I had literally a visceral experience with that. That was, of course, life-changing. And then again, 2 more times down the road, 2 more step guides, I call them, mentors and teachers. Very different approaches, perhaps in different areas. I'm not going to go into that because that's not important, right? What is important is that this is a process, like that dimmer switch, and the light goes up a notch at a time, and the energy goes into, and the power goes into, and the lights get a little brighter, and the lights get a little brighter, and the lights get a little brighter, and we see more. So at 20 years of sobriety, Bill writes the 12 and 12. If you have read the 12 and 12, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, a commentary written in 1953, Bill was about 20 years sober. It's peppered with the word emotional sobriety. He doesn't really define it. He does later on in a letter that went into the grapevine and was published and began to at least bring it to public awareness that it was a thing, emotional sobriety, called the next frontier. It didn't catch on. Ernie Larson in 1984 wrote a book, Stage 2 Recovery. It's very clear that that's emotional recovery, emotional sobriety. Didn't catch on. But right around the late 90s and early 2000s, the word and the reality began to catch on, and that's what Joe and I have picked up. As she indicated 17, 18 years ago when she called, and I was introduced to telephone workshops for the very first time. One of my co-facilitators at that time and still is Dr. Alan Berger, and he's a clinical psychologist, and he caught the bug also with regard to emotional sobriety and wrote his own book on that. Very worth reading if you're interested. Fortunately, those telephone workshops decided, Joe and her colleague that were co-facilitating them pre-COVID, for about a year or two before COVID, introduced me to the technology of Zoom. And now we have this international reach, which I'm very blessed to have and very grateful to have, because it's helped me. You've heard it in the rooms with teachers. They say, if you want to really learn something, try to teach it. Well, it's been a constant learning for me as I've attempted to make it very practical and very applicable and very experiential to other people. Wow. Didn't know I was going to say all of that. Just to reinforce, though, what Joe was talking about in terms of the science of this. We have 3 brains. Human beings have 3 brains. It's pure science. I'm not a brain specialist, but I know the basic outlines. And that brain stem, that first brain, is the lizard brain, the chemistry, the biology of survival. And Joe mentioned, all right, fight, flight, and freeze, fawn. 4 different ways of dealing with safety and survival at the biological chemical level. But then, fortunately, human beings develop the limbic system, that second brain, which is about emotions primarily. All right? The emotions of anger, the emotions of fear, the emotions of shame, dishonesty, the emotions of manipulation and that fawning to feel safe and to belong and to survive. Now, here's where emotional sobriety comes in, that third brain, that cortex, neocortex. It's one brain with a couple functions. The primary functions are that I can know something. That makes me specifically human and very different than any other sentient being. I can self-reflect. I can know that I know, or I can know that I don't know and be embarrassed by that, as I mentioned. But the other function that I find even more powerful and more important in the human journey is the will. I have a free will. These are not physical components of the cortex. These are functions of the cortex. One is to know, and the other is to make a choice, to make a decision. And that's what I got introduced to at my 10th year of sobriety with um, the set-aside attitude and the set-aside prayer. It allowed me to be willing to be open to the grace of a whole new experience of restless, irritable, and discontented. Bill's probably definition of unmanageability. It's in the doctor's opinion, restless, irritable, and discontented. There I am, 10 years sober with two powerful spiritual awakenings, and I had no idea about what unmanageability was. And I began to learn how to manage my life consciously. I wrote a definition just this morning of emotional sobriety. It's just mine, and it'll be reworked, and you may or may not agree with some of it or all of it. It's the conscious management of our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors, to be in alignment with the flow of reality as it actually manifests. It's very material oriented. It's very physical oriented. It's really connected to evolution. Material reality emerges, integrates, disintegrates, and reemerges. That's the function of material reality. And that's how we process it. Fortunately, we have the ability to understand it and to change our thoughts, to change our feelings, to change our behavior. Probably not in that order. In fact, one of the brilliant researchers at UCLA talks about the brain functions. And Classic said, synapses that fire together, wire together, meaning the way the brain functions creates our patterns of thinking and feeling, perceiving and processing, all coming from behavior. And so he codifies for us scientifically what we heard in the rooms from wisdom teachers. It doesn't matter what you think and know. It doesn't matter how you feel and your emotions. Oh, it does, but not in the big picture. In the big picture, it only matters what you do. And what you do determines how you think. What you do determines how you feel. This is emotional sobriety. Taking full responsibility consciously for how we think and how we feel, but most especially how we behave. And that's the feedback loop that's so most important. And any of you that have done any work in the spirit, any work in recovery, you know that's true. That when you change your behavior, everything changes. Now, maybe not in any logical or at least perceived logical order, but everything does change. Not by Sunday, but by someday, as I get kind of cute sometimes. Well, in my own mind. I'm going to read it again. Conscious management of our emotions, thoughts, and behavior. To be in alignment. The word's not in the big book, alignment, but it's my term for step 3. Made a decision to be in alignment. I do not like the term God's will. Conversation for another day. If you have questions about it, Nan could even send you a reflection that I have about that, God's will. It's a clunky term. I understand the spirit of it. It's just clunky, though, because what it does is it humanizes God. One of my teachers, Richard Rohr, is a Franciscan priest. And of course, as a Franciscan Catholic priest, he knows the Bible and he quotes Genesis. God made humans in God's image and likeness. And then he just, with tongue in cheek and a little spark in his eye, say, and we returned the favor. We made God in our image and likeness. I think that's really cute. And another author talks about reality. Reality just is. It's not good or bad. No. Please listen to this. In reality, there's no good or bad. Objectively, there's just circumstances and events and outcomes and consequences. If a deer comes to a lake to get a drink of water, it's very good for the deer. If the mountain lion comes up and eats the deer, very bad for the deer, very good for the mountain lion. I'm not saying that anything about the objectivity of good and evil. I don't even get into that discussion. I'm just saying, in reality, there's just what is. And so I've adopted the word rather than good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, appropriate or inappropriate, helpful or not helpful. And when it comes to tragedy and life is filled with difficulty, I use the term unfortunate. Some lives are really unfortunate, and some are really fortunate. I'm not sure that all wove into what we were talking about. I hope it did. I was trying to give a substance to and maybe a little further conversation about emotional sobriety and the chemical and the normal and the natural part of what we're doing here as the next step in recovery from addiction. Bill says we're not cured, but not of addiction. There's been neutralized there. That's it, the word in the big book. Once we finish the ninth step, but we're not cured and we have a daily reprieve. He doesn't get really clear as to what does that mean? Not cured of what? Daily reprieve from what? I think it's about unmanageability. This organic predisposition of survival, self-centeredness, which fortunate people who are on a path of human development at around 25, 30, 35, or 40 become mature and understand how to balance in terms of their relationship with themselves and with life and with other people. Addicts are a particular disadvantage in that. I'm going to stop now, Joe, and maybe you want to leverage off of anything there or whatever, where else you wanted to go.
Thank you so much, Herb. If you've got a pen and paper handy, I really always suggest that you have pen and paper when you come to a workshop. It helps to wake the brain up and helps to keep you focused. And I want you to write some things down. I want you, if you can, write down the word emotional sobriety. There were two words, emotional sobriety. And I want you to think about, what does this mean to you? How would you tell today if in your life you were being emotionally sober? What would it look like? What are the qualities? What are the behaviors? The word that I came to use is balance. The word that I came to use, and it helps me to integrate that into all different parts of my life, at work, in a family situation, in a um, by myself walking. What is balance today? Financially, emotionally, spiritually, am I balanced? Of my own power, I get out of balance. And so what I found when I started to research and study at 24, with the support of some dear friends and community members, I became a teacher. You know, someone who had a life of anxiety attacks, when she finally got sober and abstinent and clean, decided she wanted to be a teacher, stand in front of people and talk for a living. Oh my God. I love helping people. I love bringing them along. I love facilitating groups. It's just a joy. I just put one foot in front of the other, and this is where my life takes me. So, emotional sobriety, we're considering what that means. The next word I want you to write down is perception. Perception. Can't always tell you how to spell things. I suddenly thought in my head, how do you spell that? There's another word I want you to write down, and I'm going to have to ask Herb to say it because when I say it, I'm Australian and you won't understand it unless you're Australian. The word is spelt AWE.
How
Now,
do
when
you
I
say
say, I say or. How do you say? What do you say?
Oh,
It's the same thing. I don't know what you say, but every time I
I
can't,
heard an R in yours.
I think that's my accent. But every time I say the word or people think they're rowing a boat. Maybe you can row a boat, that's fine. The word AWE. I want you to write it down. This word is a powerful word that I employ every day. I'm raising kids. I work with teenagers. I work with neurodivergent, so people that come in with issues. I support people of all different faiths. And helping them, what I found in the 12-step methodology was the first step is powerlessness, recognizing there is something going on that you are powerless over. The first thing that I came to really embrace was this nervous energy. My energy inside my body would get really activated. And I use that word, activated. And I'm powerless over it. It's inconvenient. Right? It's an inconvenient thing and I'm powerless. So the first step is this acknowledgement of powerlessness. The second step is an acknowledgement of power. And how do you teach young people? How do you teach people of different faiths? How do you teach people who have faith but still don't let go of their self-will? You know, it's hard. And so I started teaching this word AWE, or I won't make a joke, but I can't pronounce it. But I started teaching it, and I do it every day. I've just come back yesterday. I did meet up with Herb, and I was in a beanie and winter clothes because it was super cold. I was on holidays with my partner, and I was sharing that every day I fill my day with moments of this mystery. And I need to do this the same way that I need to breathe. And I wanted him to see what I was doing and why, because it helps us in raising young people. And I wanted him to see that this is something I'm hoping he will carry on. Like, there is a method to what I'm doing. And how I do this is as we're driving down this road, I mention those trees look beautiful. When I see Herb's face, I remember 17 years of hard work. And I think, what an amazing moment that he said yes. I'll tell you something else. I have a trauma history. I don't talk about it too much, just to say that it is. But when I met Herb, I didn't see him. So I would have had an issue with an older, bald man because that was something that what psychologists might call a trigger. I So you would not have seen the best of me. I would not have asked for help. But the universe had this plan of introducing me to Herb via the telephone. And it was 3 or 4 years before I saw a photo. I thought, oh, wow. Isn't my God funny? You know? These little moments of awe, AWE, precious. Pay attention. So as I raise young people who are needing this method of life, I teach them to find the precious in every day. A few weeks ago was Mother's Day. And I know that this causes heartache for a lot of people out there who will never be a mother, or those people that are mothers and their children are lost from this world. Or maybe you have these people in your life, but they are not healthy and it's full of sadness. And so we have this day marked in the calendar called Mother's Day. And we have a perception of what should be. I should be respected. I should be called. I should have a happy family. I should have had a happy childhood. These are big things that I'm saying. And we have this perception. And this day comes in the calendar and we wait all year for this one day. Hopefully you're not waiting all year. I'm making a story here. But this one day comes and it goes. And what about the rest of the year? You know, every day is precious. So my Mother's Day came and my 2 children were in the house with me all day. Neither of them wished me happy Mother's Day. I still had to get up and do the dishes, make meals, and do ridiculous mundane things. The person that's meant to empty the dishwasher didn't do it again. No one said happy Mother's Day. My partner, who's gone for half the week at the moment, he's working away from home. He didn't call me to say happy Mother's Day. I did call my mother on Mother's Day. But I have trained my children well. Every day is Mother's Day, is what I tell them. Every day is my birthday. Every day is precious. We never know what will happen tomorrow. All we have is today. I wanted to smash the perception that I'm going to wait till Mother's Day to celebrate mother, the word mother, whatever that is. Just for today, celebrate today. Just celebrate what you can today. Notice, no matter where you are, what is special today. This connects us to, now, a little bit of biology here, which isn't in the script, but a lot of what I do some teaching around this area, and the phrase that I use is dose. Now, it's not in any of my slides, but dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. I live by it. I teach kids. It's easy to teach them. It's easy to teach people who don't have a 12-step background. When you bring in a sense of awe, a sense of that step to God, that spirit, that mystery, when you can find a way to bring that into your daily life today, don't wait till one day in the middle of the year. Do it today, right now. A sense of precious awe and a special moment. This moment is special. That releases serotonin. I spent my whole life in that sympathetic nervous system, aggravated, my whole body full of adrenaline, waiting for the saber-toothed tiger or the mountain lion that Herb was talking about. The mountain lion was coming. and my adrenaline was up all the time. That damages our body. We need to have a way to bring that hyper alertness down. And that's what step 2 is about. Connection to that mystery releases that body chemical serotonin. It releases our nervous system so that we can rest and repair and heal. We need to have balance. I do need to have that adrenaline in order to get out of my house. Anger helps me to drive my car when it helps me to be more alert. But I also need a way of soothing my body. And if I do not find healthy ways, everyone, of soothing my body, I will find unhealthy ways. And that is so important to teach our next generation how to compensate for that high energy level. We need to have a way of bringing our energy down. And so a simple method that I use is embracing that word that Herb says better than me.
Mm.
Embracing.
Oh.
Oh. I'm coming to the US very shortly and I will have
Practice.
pronunciation lessons.
You'll practice.
So Herb and I are moving into a different topic now. Not a different topic, but we're moving this perception, this idea of perception along into what some of you in the 12th step world will know as maybe it's part of the 10th step. So having something happen and being able to see it from a different perspective. I'm going to put on a slide and then maybe Herb, I'll put on a slide that will talk to that. So let me just show this. So this slide here is a review of what we talked about last time we were together. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. These are stress responses. All humans, this is very common. It's healthy. There's nothing wrong with any of these. But what happens for me is I get stuck. I have a heightened nervous system. It's a stress response, and I got stuck in this area. But what I want you to pay attention to is the perception here, the statement down the bottom. I am not safe unless I take charge. Fight. Flight. I'm not safe unless I get away. My body has adrenaline running through it, and my mind turns that into some logic. I make a perception of what's going on. I'll be safe if I can get away. No, you won't. It's like when you have a rotten tooth, a tooth that's decaying, and you think, I don't want to go to the dentist, I'll just chew on the other side of my mouth. You still have that rotten tooth. The freeze here, I'm not safe and I can't move. So this perception that I can't move. Fawning, I'm safe if you are okay with me. If you love me, if you're happy with me, then the world is okay. I can relax. Now, these are actually healthy in small doses. This is how humans interact and survive and move. There's nothing wrong with any of these. But as a really good addict that I am, I don't do anything a little. I get into it and I get stuck. So what we're looking at now is, I've got a slide that I'm going to bring up. This one I won't talk to too much, but anger thinking. They should, they always, they never. How dare they? Anger often protects hurt, fear, or disappointment. The pause helps me to return to the present. The pause is that sense of mystery. Step 2. The first 3 steps, those of you that are new to step work, I'm powerless. I'm powerless over my energy. You know, there is a power, and that power we find when we notice the mystery. And just for today, I'm letting go of my way of fixing things and leaning into that mystery. That's steps 1, 2, and 3. Fear thinking. What if I have to do this? I can't handle this. I need to know now. So these are just examples of fear thinking. And where I wanted to take this to was this. I wanted to talk to this one and then pause for a moment. Now, Herb, looking at what's on the screen, it takes us to perceived role, real role, and this thing that I've been using, the vision statement, which is a direction to take yourself, a future direction. Herb, in the big book workshop and work that you do in the big book, Herb introduced me to column work, column 3 and 4, columns 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in column 3, you really narrow down a perceived role. My feeling says they don't care. My perceived role, I am the uncared for person. I'm the abandoned daughter or the ignored employee. And we do some work. You can't come to it straight away. You honor the feeling, because underneath the feeling is often grief or sadness. But it takes you to a real role. The real role could be, now these are just examples. The real role could be a woman who is not caring for herself. Now, it doesn't mean that the person maybe doesn't care. But then you do this work and you recognize, yes, this is going on, but I may not be looking after myself. Yes, these things go on with others, but I have some work that I could do. So the examples on here, I'm not safe. My perceived role, I'm the powerless victim of this person or this situation. My real role, I am the man who has abandoned his own sense of safety. And the vision statement, today, I am the man who navigates life's obstacles. I show up to difficult conversations with grace. So there is a lot happening in here. I'm going to pause and just see, Herb, do you want to talk? Do you want me to go back or would you like to talk to this slide? Because there's a lot here and I know that I've jumped. I'm now, what do you want to do here?
Well, thank you. And let's leave this up. There's just so many. I've made 4 pages of notes or comments and or reactions, and but let's just stay spontaneous here. I do want to make one side comment, if you sidebar, if you will, because I find it interesting. The many books get translated, and the translators do the best they can, trying to get things into the English language from other languages, not the least of which, in terms of the scripture, coming from 5 or 10,000 years ago of various languages and very difficult to transcribe into the English language. But it is interesting to me some years ago, some of the scholars that I read indicated that the phrase fear of God, actually, the accurate translation is awe of God. And so when you brought up that word awe, it had a particular meaning to me in terms of, and you said the preciousness and or the mystery of it. And So that might be helpful to somebody who is in fact dealing with some negative experience with steps 2 and 3. But other than that, coming back to the column work and the key words for the column 3, without it's a I spend at least a month of weekly workshops talking about column 3 and another month of weekly workshops talking about column 4. So obviously I'm not going to do it complete justice, but the words I use to capture the distilled essence of each of them is in column 3, it's about my beliefs. I am actually looking at the lenses through which I'm looking. And I mean it. I'm removing my glasses if you're looking. And I'm saying these lenses have been ground so that I can see more or less 20/20. Without those lenses, I cannot see. But if I didn't know that I cannot see, then I am seeing what I see in its reality. When I put these lenses on ground in a particular way, they focus me so that I can see more accurately objective reality, but I'm actually still not seeing objective reality. I am seeing an image that I'm interpreting based on all the chemistry that Joe was talking about and all the history with that objective, that vision, the person, the circumstances, and I'm processing it through the history of whatever decades I've been living and experiences that I've had. I am filtering. I can never see reality accurately. This is so huge. It's a pause in terms of the powerlessness Joe was talking about. Now, Bill didn't have this kind of science and or this kind of training when he was writing the big book, but he did have the reality of the experience in terms of unmanageability. Joe said, it's really hard, it's really difficult. No, no, it's not. It's impossible. It's not hard or difficult. No, no, no. Bill says it very clearly, page 62. We can't even reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing we're trying on our own power. We need God. We need this power. Now, whatever, I'm not going to do a teaching on steps 2 or 3 right now. So whatever that is that you believe in or you hope for, whether you believe in it and or just hope for it, because your life depends on it, whatever that is, okay, that's the assumption of steps 2 and 3. Um, and even in the column 3 and column 4, he said, you can analyze it, you can define it, you can write about it, you can talk about it, you can understand it, you can experience it. The understanding of resentment and the exact nature of it. But in some cases, you can't get rid of it. No, it's not hard or difficult. It's impossible. He spends a page and a half between column 3 and column 4, pages 66 and 67, talking about that in his own words. But this is I believe, the distilled understanding of it is that I am powerless over this deep-rooted anger. I am powerless over this deep-rooted feeling of victim, of should, of my expectations, of my betrayal. I am powerless to forgive. This is the benefit of the spiritual process. Fred Luskin, as you know, I do some work with, is a scientist, psychologist who has studied forgiveness. And his process is a psychological development. He said of forgiveness and releasing this deep, visceral rage, volcanic, red hot stuff that many of us have from our lives of abuse or betrayal. And he said, you 12-steppers and spiritual people have a real advantage. I said, what? He said, well, I'm a scientist. I can't go to non-human. He said, you have a real advantage in that you have the X plus factor of a mystery. that you can in fact believe in and hope that it is real and be in awe of that as you navigate. I love the word as we navigate life. And that's what emotional sobriety is about, is becoming more graceful, more graceful in our navigation of life. The fellow who wrote The Road Less Traveled, his opening line, it's classic. It's life is difficult. Yeah. All right. So, and then so the third column is about the belief to challenge the shoulds. Fred Luskin calls it unenforceable rules. I should, they should, we should, life should. Anytime you hear yourself either think it or feel it or say it, just challenge it. It may be true for you, but just challenge it. Is it true? Is it objectively true? Or is it the story? Joe used to, in her slides, is it the story that we've grown up with? Somebody told it, or we told it to ourselves, and we repeat it, and we repeat it, and we repeat it, and it becomes hardwired in us because it's the truth for us. It's just a lie. That column 3 is a lie. It surfaces and reveals the lie that we believe to be the truth. And then we go to the fourth column. And the word I use, the distilled word I use for the fourth column is it reveals my motives. Coming from the Latin movere, what moves me? What moves me to go left or go right? What moves me to take initiative? What are the motives? And inevitably, what I saw in the 5 questions in the big book in that area is all the motives were me. And she used the term, Joe used the term, safety. And synonym for that is survival. It's at that level of survival. Our very life, I mean, we don't feel threatened all the time, although some of us do. But all of these responses are biological, chemical reactions to our perception of circumstances and people. And emotional sobriety is about learning through making mistakes and correcting them, usually with some guidance from a mentor teacher, learning from our mistakes, not making them as frequently, not making them as grossly, making more effective adjustments. This is emotional sobriety is about adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. And that's that step 10, which we may get time to talk about. So those are the comments that I wanted to make. Column 3 is about the lie, my beliefs. I didn't realize that I was so delusional. At 50 years old and 7 or 8 years sober. And then again, when I did the work, column 4 was revealing the corrupt motives that I had, that they were all about me and the impact I had on other people. Now, I may just be particularly blind or narcissistic, probably all true, but I was not able to see or evaluate accurately the impact of my behavior on other people. It was like overwhelming when that curtain parted. And I was able to see that, and of course, then make the amends that are counseled or suggested in the book, and the accountability and the wisdom of people who had done that and had experience to guide me with it. Stopping there.
Yeah. Thank you, Herb.
Oh,
So,
so I'm not stopping, of course. The
yeah, go,
third
go, go.
column is the lie. The third column is the lie. The fourth column is the truth. And you talked about the role and responsibility. See, in the conversion or transformation of the victim mentality. Oh, every one of us has been a victim of some circumstance or some people, some betrayal or some malfeasance of some kind. We all have had that experience. It is true, we have been a victim. But here, in this area of resentment and or whatever else, all right, we don't have a part. get really clear. We don't have a part. We have 100% because it's our reaction to people and circumstances. It's not the people and circumstances. We are not responsible for people and circumstances. We are responsible for our reaction at this moment. In fact, I can see back, I was responsible last week, but that's irrelevant. Today, I'm responsible for my reaction to last week. Yeah, now I am done.
Yeah, yeah. So we're inviting you to write down questions to sort of get a little involved. We're going to come to you soon with some questions. So if something comes to you, I want you to write it down. Don't think you'll remember. If your brain is anything like mine, the minute you put your hand up or we say, does anyone have any questions? It'll all disappear. Okay, so if you would like to ask a question, write it down and start thinking about it. Where this started making an impact on me personally, what we're looking at here is the body has a reactivity. And there are lots of causes for that. I have some allergies, I have a health issues, and I have a nervous disposition, doctors say. A nervous disposition anyway. Okay? So I have some things going on in my body, and my brain makes a logic out of that. But it's not necessarily a healthy truth. Okay? Or perhaps it's not the only truth. So yes, I was perhaps the abandoned girlfriend. Okay, yes, I was poorly treated, perhaps. But today, that event happened 20 years ago. Today, I am the woman who hasn't let go. I am the woman who mistreats herself. I don't take myself for walks. I don't get healthy sleep. I don't exercise. I eat food that I know I'm allergic to. Today, I am the woman who abandons herself. Being able to gently see that my thinking is trying to respond to my biology was very helpful for me. So, how I learned to recognize this, one of the ways I learned to recognize this is I would get a thought that I was a terrible employee or a terrible friend. Have you ever had that thought where you just get this thought, I'm awful at something? Okay, and it's just you feel it in your bones. Okay? What I started to do was when I get this thought in my mind that I am a terrible person at something, I thought, maybe that's true. Maybe it's true. Maybe I am. Maybe my thinking is true. But what Herb just said, be curious, be open, think about it differently. Let's have a look. Let me just review the last 24 hours or 48 hours. Have I had anything extreme go on that might knock my biology off? For me, I have to look at, have I eaten anything or is there medication going on that might be affecting my biology? I have areas where I pick up, so media and food and different areas where I get out of balance. Some of you might recognize that. I have other areas where I get out of balance. So when that thought came, seemingly out of nowhere, that I'm a terrible, terrible person, or maybe I'm feeling really angry at someone, you should have done this thing. And I'm really angry and invested at my anger at you. What I found was if I reviewed the last 24 or 48 hours, I want to say herb 100% of the time, but I know those pesky little addicts out there are going to find a 0.1% where it wasn't true. So I will just say mostly. That's why the big book says rarely have we seen a person. Mostly. We try not to be absolute. But what I found was when that thinking overwhelmed me and I could embrace it with curiosity and ask myself, how you going, Joe? These last 24 hours, 48 hours, what's going on? What have you been eating, drinking, sleeping? How's your media use? Is there any interaction with some person that's been challenging? What's going on? And most of the time, I want to say all the time, there has been an event. And my body holds the memory of that event, and my body is disturbed, and my brain interprets that disturbance in my body and says, I'm angry at someone. But am I really angry, or is it because I got a phone call from my mother? You know? And that's why I'm really angry at that person at work who doesn't fill the paper in the photocopier machine. Like, I'm really angry, and that misplaced anger that I'm very invested in. So, what our journey is practicing, helping us to learn, is this perception that we have a perceived role that we get very, very invested in, an identity. I am the victim. I am the hard done by person. I am the abandoned colleague. I am the overlooked or the ignored. We have this identity. And we get so invested in that identity that we miss out on the transformation. In order to move to this next level of recovery of emotional balance and emotional sobriety, we're going to have to let go of part of our identity and find this new identity, which is Herb's worksheets that's called this real role. We move from this perceived role. First, we have to see it, because often we don't see it. We just think it's everything. It's obvious. I'm the abandoned person. I'm the hard done by person. Obviously. And then we do this work and we see, yes, some bad things happen. The world is full of shitty people doing shitty things. I'm sorry. But just for today, what are you doing for self-care? Just for today, who are you choosing to spend your time with? Just for today, are you abandoning yourself or your loved ones? What are you doing today? And that helped me to come to a new level of growth. One of my children was born with some issues, and I had some grief. And I don't know if Herb will remember, because it was probably a little. He does a lot of work with a lot of people. But I did one of these workshops with Herb, one of these workshops with sheets with Herb, one-on-one. And we had a conversation. And up the top, I forget the wording, the mother by this disease. I was the victim of this disease, right? That's my perceived role. Is it true? Yes. I didn't choose it. I'm powerless. So this young, beautiful baby, they don't choose these things. I am the victim of this disease. Some of us, we are the victim of our past. And I did this work, and I came to the end of the worksheet, and with your guidance, Herb, I realized that for me, the real role today was, and this was however many years ago, many years ago, my real role in that moment was I was the mother in disease. What does that mean? It means I was putting headphones on and listening to podcasts rather than playing in the sandpit with my kids. It means I was using food. It means I was not doing the things that you need to do. I was hiding. I was avoiding. I was in grief. I could have written the real role. Today, if I was writing, I would be a bit more gentle and I would say my real role was the mother in grief, the mother not letting go of grief. Okay, but I recognized that there was something, yes, these other things are true, but this is true also. And if I embrace my real role, I now have what psychologists would call agency, power. In my real role, I can move. And I create a vision statement. And my vision was the mother in recovery. My vision was the woman who embraced self-care today. One day at a time, my life changed from that small moment of being willing to look at sadness and look at grief from a different perspective, letting go of the victim. Herb.
Yeah, this is so critical. It's so counterintuitive and it's so countercultural. And many of you here may, in fact, be resisting this or wanting to explain how, in fact, no, 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 your case is different, but it's not. And I will say there's no exemptions from that. There's no exemptions. It's 100% true that each of us is 100% responsible for our life. 100% responsible for our reactions, 100% responsible for our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior, and the consequences of our behavior. Oh, that's hard. That's such so hard. I don't have any control. I have influence. It's so hard. And that's where Bill talks in the 12 and 12. He uses this wonderful word, which is my sort of vantage point this last year. I've incorporated it into my personal experience and vocabulary, and that's partnership. I'm in partnership with the power that I believe in. I've made the choice that is, and I operate as if it's true. Because, in fact, as Joe pointed out earlier, and the Bill points it out in the big book in not so subtle terms, underneath every step is powerlessness. And that's why in every step, he asks us to pray. I can't do this. And yet I'm responsible to do this. And it's a mix of willingness and taking action and being accountable and having faith and having trust. The faith to make the choice and the trust to do the work. I'm never a victim in terms of my current feelings and behavior. I am the perpetrator of the reaction, the thoughts and feelings, especially the behavior, the movement of my feet, and the consequences and the impact on myself and the impact on other people. Now, having said all of that, it's gruesome, it's dark, it's heavy stuff. I wrote down a word here. Why are we doing this? I mean, it's obvious to most of us, and this won't be a aha moment, mostly perhaps. And yet for me, it put it all in perspective. What's the motive for us even having these workshops and talking like this and spending 17 years together doing this work? Freedom. Certainly freedom from addiction. But that's the minimum promise. And Jo was quite clear in terms of her journey. That was the minimum promise. I mean, it's wonderful. It's glorious. Some of it's elusive for even people right here today. But the real promise, the magic, is freedom from unmanageability. Yeah, you won't read that in the big book and you won't hear it in the meetings. And be careful about saying it. You might get tarred and feathered. But we are, in fact, responsible to manage our lives. And that's the message, the best kept secret in the book, in the big book and in the rooms. We are responsible to manage our lives, but not on our own power. But we are responsible to establish a partnership with power. Bill says it in the ABCs, if you have any doubt. It was pointed out to me just 5 years ago, and it became as clear. It was an experience rather than a knowledge. In the B, no human power. Bill knew it. He intuited. I mean, at 4 years of sober, he's writing the big book. No human power. Now, we can have another discussion on what does an agnostic and an atheist do with all that? And I've got lots of people that I'm connected to that are agnostics and atheists. If you have any problem, I can connect you to them, not to me. I've had no problem with power other than seeing that my concept of power for 50 years, my concept of power was the very impediment to my relationship with power. And I didn't know it. But I got free of that as a result of doing this work. So I'm going back to my opening comment. Freedom is the motivation. Freedom from addiction, certainly, but freedom to manage our lives effectively, efficiently. I love words, and I use the word flounder for the darkness that most of us have walked in and some of us still participate in, the shadows. Flounder. But we're invited to flourish. And that's the title of a book by a eminent psychologist, Siegelman, started the movement of positive psychology. That is, looking at life through the vision of optimism rather than disease, looking at the vision of recovery as health, not disease. Looking at, and of course, lots of teachers talk about the benefit, and you talked about the chemistry of endorphins, of gratitude and helpfulness that create that sense of well-being. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. So I mentioned step 10, and I think, Herb, if we could maybe start winding up for questions, but finishing with a quick, why did I bring up step 10 today? How does that connect with what we've been talking about, Herb?
I think step 10, I believe this is your invitation. Step 10 is the tool for emotional sobriety. I'm going to put up slides now. And please, Joe and I have both invited you to raise your hand through the reaction icon if you have a question, a comment, an experience, a clarification, anything that and you can address it to either or both of us. And even if you have some resistance to it, be kind, but bring whatever you have in your head and in your heart. And I'm going to bring up a couple slides here to that's my favorite, the bondage of addiction, but it's also the bondage of unmanageability. And Bill talks about in the 10th step, in the 12 and 12, thank God, he let's see, he clarifies the use of the step 10. He says it's a spiritual axiom. Whenever you're disturbed, that's the word he uses. It's a safety net, a large universal net for any mischief, any shadow in us disturbed. Well, it was clarified for me. The man says, where are you irritated? I was 10 years sober. I'd been relieved of all my resentments. That's a story for a different day. He says, well, where are you irritated? Where are you annoyed? Well, I didn't have long to get much on paper there. I had quite a little list at 10 years of sobriety. No resentments, but irritations and annoyance, of course, because I hadn't seen unmanageability. I was still in some form of victim mentality, restless, irritable, or discontent.
So if you start to raise your hand, we've got 3 hands already. Herb's just
Wonderful.
getting his his slide where he needs it to be. We're just going to just tie it together to this step 10 brief discussion on how to live day to day with this work where our body gets out of balance and our mind puts a logic to it. This is the reasoning. And the step 10 is asking us in a day spot check in a moment to review our thinking, to stay open to reviewing what's really going on. You may have put reasoning to something, and because it's yours, we hold on to it because it's tied into my identity. Some of us have a victim identity. Some of us have maybe some other kind of identity that we get very attached to. Are you ready to go, Herb?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we've talked about balance and freedom. All right. The freedom, the joy of living is the phrase in step 12 in the 12 and 12. And this is meant to show the freedom by laying down the victim bars and taking responsibility for our lives and flourishing. I went through this already. The problem is that we're asleep, dreaming that we're awake. That's a line from Gurdjieff, a Russian philosopher. Bill says disturbed is the key. If in fact you're disturbed, there's something wrong with you. He says so clearly. And of course, once you've done a column 3 and column 4 and had an experience with it, you can own it. So if you're disturbed, do step 10. And he clarifies it's a spot check inventory. On the spot, at that moment that you're disturbed and you're conscious that you're disturbed and you're responsible for being disturbed, then you pay attention to the disturbance. And we know the sources, and Joe articulated those in terms of the survival mechanisms. But Bill gives us in step 10 a formula. It's very simple, misunderstood and misapplied by many, many, many people. It's so simple. First, we pray. Why? Because we're powerless, of course. No, we cannot. This is not a human self-development program. Our first action is to acknowledge I need help and ask for it. But our second action is to acknowledge our humanity. I need to talk to somebody, not my sponsor necessarily, not a person even in a 12-step program necessarily, although those are two wonderful resources. But he just says, talk to somebody, not a therapist necessarily, but of course it's a wonderful resource. Not a priest or a minister, of course there's a wonderful resource. He says, talk to anybody because there's something therapeutic and healing about putting it into words with somebody who actually will listen to us. And then, of course, repairing the damage, because if I'm disturbed, I share. I'm going to disturb you. And not all the time. It's when we've created damage. But then inevitably, the final turning from my self-centeredness and its consequences is that I want to help someone, not as a sponsor, not as a person in a 12-step program, but help someone, and or at least have the attitude of helping someone. That's the turning. Not necessarily, he said, turn our thoughts to helping somebody else. He doesn't say actually that we help anybody. In the big book, read it again carefully. He's a good psychologist in that sense, that he knows that how we're thinking will inevitably get translated into behavior. And then these are the results as I see them, and they're basically the acronyms, the antonyms of that first column, the opposite of resentment, which is to hold anger over and over again, feeling anger, is to release it. The definition of forgiveness and that process of steps 4 through 9. The opposite of fear, read page 68 in the big book, is trust. It's earned over time through consistent experiences, but it begins with an act of faith, a choice. It's available, a solution. The obvious opposite of dishonesty is honesty. In his chapter 5, How It Works, look at the title, How It Works. And the entire page is about rigorous honesty, the sine qua non of having a program and or of becoming the best person that we can be, a decent human being, is to be rigorously honest. And I said to my sponsor, what does that mean? He said, to be transparent. I said, what does that mean? He said, to have your insides and your outsides match. I still didn't know what he meant. I was 5 years sober before I began to realize. But be helpful. You notice it's all in caps and it's in active italics because this is the key turning, to have a mindset of loving kindness and how to be helpful. This is the motion of sobriety. I'm going to stop there because I think that's enough of that, and we'll go to the questions. But step 10 is a very simple process on the spot, not in writing, not at night. At least this is my interpretation, because none of that is the instruction in the big book and or the 12 and 12. It's about just this simple process of acknowledging, accepting, and adjusting. Those are the three A's. If you go the triple A, traveling this journey of emotional sobriety, to acknowledge reality, to accept reality, to adjust to reality. Reality will never adjust to us. Never. Reality will never adjust to us. All right. So, Joe, if you want to just call on the people as they come up and we'll have a conversation.
Thank you, Herb. We'll go to Zara first. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Now, I've just there. Well done. Do you have a question?
Okay, well, I'm
Okay.
just trying to unmute myself. Thank you so much for this amazing discussion. Now, I have sort of like two questions, but actually in one question. Now, when my experience with step 10 is whatever anything upsets me, I'll try to talk to, as Herb said, that to anyone, like even at my work, because they know what I'm doing. But sometimes even when I talk to someone about it, not all cases, when I talk to someone about it and release it and pray to God and like have responsibility of it and then pray to my higher power to release it, I find myself again during the day thinking about it and having the resentment about it. Does this mean that I should again do the same process? The other thing is with emotional sobriety, or even maybe as far as I understand, what we are doing should kind of like make us stay in most of the day in that kind of like state of peace and not thinking that rubbish thoughts. Now, if I really for me during the day, I feel myself after thinking about how awesome I am, which kind of like selfishness and egocentric, or about what people are doing in my life, which kind of like starting the process again. I can't put my mind most of the day on the idea of helping each other. Thanks God that I do have kind of like I do my practice of writing and I have my meditation group that I prepare topic for. I try to put my mind there, kind of like helping others, but still during the day I have this kind of like shatter in my mind. Thank you.
Well, wonderful energy. Thank you for sharing that. And it's a really relevant question. Every once in a while, step 10 needs a little more energy from me, and I need to go home or be at home, sit and do some writing in column 3 and column 4. What are my beliefs and expectations? What are my motives? And how is my behavior impacting other people? I keep it really straightforward and simple, but I put it in writing and then I'll read it to somebody else. No, so I will sit down and do not really step 10, although it's the elaborate step 10 of inventory. I'll sit down and do a column 3 and a column 4 in a shorthand version. And I have no problem with anybody thinking that they're awesome. Now, of course, I'm a recovered narcissist, so you would expect that from me. But be that as it may, no, I think Marianne Williamson said that fear is the fear that of really recognizing our real worth. And I found that in the rooms that of my weekly workshops, one of the pandemic problems is low self-worth, a lack of sense of value, and even to the point that they don't value having recovery enough because they're not worth it. Now, they're not conscious of that until they're conscious of it, but then that is a breakthrough. So, The Power of Positive Thinking was a book that was written back in the 30s that basically began, I think, some of the positive orientation that now, fortunately, has been recognized in much of the self-help literature and certainly the psychological literature. Thanks. That was great, Zahra. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love the energy. I love the energy. Just also, Herb, if we could talk to how doing a 10th step in the moment, as her, oh, I've lost your face. I assume you're still here. Zara, as was just said, when we go through the day, that energy comes up. One of the questions that Herb just talked about, a third and fourth column. One of the questions, question number 10, why do I do it? What's my payoff?
That's
So,
huge, Joe. That's really huge. So yes, excellent. Please.
so what is my payoff? You might find, Zara, you might find that the energy that you get from being angry at this person at work, or what I forget the example that you brought up, but you might find that that energy is useful to you to continue doing something else that you're doing. If you're going to let go of, and that's why it keeps coming up throughout your day, because you're benefiting from the emotion of being irritated, or the emotion of being overwhelmed, or the emotion, the energy that you have. So
Yeah,
when we do a
it's an
10th, yeah,
excellent
go.
question within the column three is what is the benefit to me? What is the value to me? Most people, when they first hear the question, they go, "Oh, there's no benefit." I go, "No, there must be because you have it. You have this. We don't do anything that isn't serving us, consciously or
There is a
unconsciously."
payoff. There's a payoff.
Energy,
There's a
but this
payoff.
energy, and yes, I am addicted to the energy. I'm addicted
Uh,
to fuel myself with the energy of anger. But exactly, but this is not, but this should go.
well. See, you just said should. Really?
You know?
Really? No, but what's the payoff? And is it real? See, you have a perception of a payoff that's actually a delusion. It's not a payoff. It's an adrenaline rush, but it doesn't serve you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's clear now. Yeah, I think it's clear. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
No, thank you. It's great.
Yeah,
Polly,
don't be
please.
afraid.
Oh,
Yeah, don't be afraid of the energy. It's our perception. So Herb just said the adrenaline rush. You may have adrenaline and energy running. So I identified anxiety from young age, nervousness. Another interpretation could be excitement, energy, adrenaline. So I get adrenaline all the time, and my perception of it has changed. So today I recognize I need. Did I go for a walk this morning? How's my food? Am I exercising? Have I been doing this too long? And I need to get up and move.
well,
So
you
my
made some
body,
you made some wonderful comments about focus on the body, and I do want to emphasize the sleep part. I went on a crusade about 20 years ago because I had a scientific breakthrough reading material on it. Um, Most everybody, and this is probably 95%, needs anywhere from 7.5 to 9 hours sleep a night. There are no exceptions. It doesn't matter what you think or feel, or what you've been told, or what you read. everybody, 95% of the people need 7.5 to 9 hours sleep a night. If you're not getting that consistently, you're undersleeping. You're, what do you call it? Sleep deprived, and it will create neuroses. Go ahead, Joe.
And you're smiling right now. Point your finger. How many hours of sleep do you get a night?
Wait, no, no, no. I sleep very well. Like sometimes I feel
Uh,
I'm oversleeping.
yeah.
All right. Well,
Good.
then that message wasn't for you. All
Okay.
right.
Someone else
Thanks.
needed to hear it. Yeah, thank you.
Adam, good to see you here.
How you doing? I gotta say, well, you probably knew I was gonna raise my hand, Herb.
I did. I hoped anyway.
uh, and I'm also I'm happy to see how many women are on this call, but I'm definitely disappointed to see how many men are on the call. So, I probably have several questions here, so I'll try to not throw everything all at once. But
we have time.
okay, so you talked about. In the first slide, it was talking about the body and then the mind, and then on the bottom it said, "Hey, we learned to pause." Right, that comes out of our literature. Um, and you've also talked a lot about nervous system, limbic system, or limbic brain versus cortex, all this kind of stuff. So, I guess there's a few questions I have just around that, which would be one is I have a terrible problem pausing, in that I don't, right? So. Can you explain kind of maybe how to build capacity around pausing? Because I think it's more of a capacity issue, at least for me. And then understanding maybe the difference, like also between being in our cortex brain versus our limbic brain. And because I also think this is kind of a problem for me where maybe I've lived in my limbic system a lot longer than I've even realized. And so not even being able to tell the difference, right? And this is goes into the unmanageability portion and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I'll start there and then I'll ask a couple more.
Well, the majority of the men that I'm exposed to trying to help over decades, the majority of them have some form of ADD, and it's real. Attention deficit disorder. It's a brain malfunction that can be treated sometimes by therapy in the traditional sense of talk therapy. And somebody mentioned earlier DBT or GBT, or I don't know the nomenclature, but it's a current and very effective methodology. I think you're familiar with it. But all three of my grandsons, I have three adult children that have three families, a son in each one of the three. All three of them have been on some form of medication since they were 2 years old, and the oldest now is 23 and the youngest is 17. And it allowed them to be able to navigate school and have social relationships. Um, my family is in recovery, so they were able to manage and watch and make sure there wasn't going to be an additional addiction problem connected to it. But without the medication, they would not have been able to be successful. So I'm not advocating medication, and I've not made a study of ADD. I'm merely commenting on my experience so far that it's real. And if you have with your background and your work that you've done, which I know about, if you're having a problem with the pause, I suspect that professional intervention might be necessary.
Yeah, let me just say, I brought up earlier dose. If you could write it down, if you've heard of it, DOSE. It's how I teach kids that might have ADHD or some sort of impulse issues like me. I'm 51. About 12 months ago, I was diagnosed ADHD, and you've had it your whole life. You've gone 50 years having anxiety and depression. And then they tell you, no, you've actually got ADHD and you don't have those other things. You've just got ADHD and you've had it for your whole life. So I'm learning.
What does
I'm new.
DOSE stand for again?
DOSE, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins.
Oh,
So when you get diagnosed, they tell you there are two things you can do. You can take a pill. They got medication, but I'm sober, clean. That's a concern. And then the other thing, because I'm raising kids who also are on this journey, is very similar to what the previous member was mentioning, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. You need to have there are different tools out there. And as I research those tools, I realize everything I've been doing in 12 step is what I needed to do. And then I look back historically and I listen to Fred, Dr. Was his name
Luskin.
Fred? No, yeah, no, I was thinking actually the fellow that wrote the acceptance prayer. Is his name
Paul.
Fred?
Oh,
Paul.
Dr.
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a speaker talk from the fellow that wrote the acceptance prayer, and I listened to that so many times because we didn't have Zoom and we didn't have other meetings. And he talks about his brain, and I identified, and he was a medical doctor, and he's not here to speak for himself, but I identified that impulse control and that anxiety that I can't trust what I'm going to do. I don't know why I did that. I don't think there was a reason. I thought there was a reason afterwards, but I don't know. So, dose is a way of memorizing dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. I crave these things, and if I do not get them from healthy methods, I will seek them from unhealthy methods. So, if I find myself scrolling on the phone, I'm missing dopamine. So looking at that is a way of so you talked about how to create a pause, and then I would be saying, well, what's your life look like? What did you do this morning? What's your morning meditation look like? How's your exercise? How's your coffee intake? All these other stimulants, they interfere with balance. So you've got to find what is going to work for you. For me, it is balancing exercise. Um, Cold showers are the dopamine hit of fantastic. I tell the school kids when they come home from school, they have a cold shower because they're so exhausted mentally. The cold shower is a way of creating energy in your body and releasing all the busyness of the brain. It biologically you get a dopamine hit. So if you don't create healthy ways of nourishing that part of you, you will look for unhealthy ways. So the child could come home from school and jump on the like the computer, or turn on the TV, because then that immediately soothes me like an adult dummy, like a pacifier, right? So you got to
I
make a
definitely identify with
choice.
adult dummy, that's for sure.
Yes.
Uh, okay, so then that leads kind of into my last part of this. So you also flashed up the slide of the columns. And so the one thing that I didn't hear you guys talk too much about was you had at the last part, it was a vision, right? Of how to, it was the antonym to that, I guess, whatever those roles were. And looking at it, what I immediately saw and kind of leads into what you're talking about, what I immediately saw is somehow to fulfill your own needs,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like that's essentially how I saw that.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I guess talk a little bit about self-care. You've already kind of talked about it, addressing our own needs versus the demand or expectation from the world or other people. And then also within the 12-step community, we've had so much conversation about being selfish and self-centered. How do we untangle that right belief of, hey, I'm selfish and self-centered versus actually caring for myself?
Yeah. Um, See, that's such a critical conversation, and we might need to address that also in future workshops because it really does touch on the Al-Anon issue and or the codependent ACOA. I'm a firm believer in the Al-Anon 12-step fellowship because they've really develop a wisdom because of the long-term application of the 12 steps in relationships concerning the difference between enabling and helping. Truly looks the same and maybe even feels the same, but very different motives and very different outcomes. And so that's where I recommend people go to find answers to those questions is in the Al-Anon, where they are able to focus on taking care of themselves while caring for other people. And yeah, the whole point of the turnaround in a 12-step program is, as you said, Adam, to not focus on sort of me being the center of the universe, but to actually turn it around at me being the center of my universe. And so I do take care of myself in order, in fact, to be useful and helpful to other people in a way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, go ahead,
I
Joe.
would I just want to say if you have a pen and paper with you, I often run workshops and get people to write down this phrase. It's a meditation or a prayer. What is the loving thing for me to do today? And I get people to write it down and think about the words. And it answers your question, but I get people to highlight particular words in this phrase. What is the loving? I want you to circle that word loving and have little arrows coming off it. So maybe you need to write, what is the responsible thing for me to do today? Or you need to change it. What is the healthy? Because you've got some medical needs and you need to look after them and you're not doing it. So, what is the loving thing is my starting point, but that's not always healthy because I get too much into self-love and self-care, and I'm not really being responsible and paying the bills. You know, what is the responsible thing for me to do? And I feel that weight. I know that intuitive thought comes. What is the responsible thing for me to do today? The other thing I get the people, some of us to highlight is the word me. It's not for the dog. It's not for your partner. It's not for your workshop or your work colleagues or for, anyone else. What is the loving thing for me to do today? When I'm in my disease, I won't be loving. And if that word loving isn't healthy, then change it to responsible. When I'm in my
Or
disease,
healthy. I like
or
healthy.
healthy,
Yeah. I
change it.
actually, yeah, use the
Health.
words that are practical for yourself.
Mm,
But
yeah,
also, I want to just say this isn't a formula. It's an art kind of, it's an art form, and it's not fixed. Today's solution for me may not be tomorrow's solution for me. It's like that's where consciousness, I do believe, is the key to all of this. The more conscious we are, and then accountability, the more one or two good, solid wisdom people in our lives that we use as sounding boards for how we're being conscious is like critically important. And you know that, but I'm saying it for the others too, also. Yeah.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right, cool. Thank you.
No, thanks.
Self-care,
Gee.
self-care and self-love is how we reflect our relationship with our high power. So if you're not looking after yourself, you do not have a healthy relationship to power.
Well,
So
and we started off, Joe, you started off with the term balance. That is
yeah,
the key theme here, other than consciousness, but the is balance, and it'll look different for each person, and it'll look different for each person differently each day, perhaps.
Can you say that again, Joe? What you just said about the relationship to power?
yeah. Self-care is one of the ways that my disease blocks me from you, Adam. It
Mhm.
blocks me from having a relationship with you. It blocks me from a relationship with myself. I don't even know who I am. Like
Mm.
just this disease riddle. And it also blocks me from a relationship with power, God, spirit, mystery, or, all right? Building self-care, moments of self-care into every day is also building a relationship with power.
Interesting.
Okay, self-care is a reflection of your connection to power. So when you lack self-care, I take the person to step two. What's going on? What is power?
Interesting.
Okay. So I see we have two hands and our time is progressing.
Well, let's deal with the two hands and no more hands, please. And Carolyn.
Hi. Oh, okay. So this is my third year working with both you, you, Herb, and Joe. Joe, oh God, I'm so nervous. And being that it's my third year, you would think I wouldn't be nervous, right? So I'm sitting here I'm doing the breathing Joe taught me, you know, but I'm still nervous. But what I wanted to say is that being that this is my third year, my first year, I didn't believe a word you said, Herb. I thought you would just talk. I'm
Well,
like,
you
this
must
man.
have because you came back.
Exactly. You invited me to come back. You invited me to stay. And then after I stayed, I was like, okay, maybe I need another year because I was that one and done girl. I wanted to come in, get the lesson, and leave. And what I'm finding out, I'm not, it doesn't work that way, especially
Right.
if I'm an addict. And I was gonna say I'm always irritable, discontent, and the other things annoyed and and I always thought it was other people, and I always played the victim and the damsel in distress, and all that. What I'm noticing is that this is my third year. I had to put myself on medication. I had to put myself on Prozac because I was having a hard time. I would hear what you say, but my the way my body chemistry is, I couldn't apply it for a length of time. I only could apply it as long as I was sitting in the rooms with you guys coming to the workshops, I was fine. But when I was out there on my own, I couldn't. So what I found was that the medication, it did something in my head that I'm here. I can hear now. I can hear what's being said, and I can do. I'm on 93 days. It was brought up, how do you create the pause? My pause started when I started doing that spiritual intervention in the morning. Those prayers, heard that in YouTube that you guys taught us to do in the morning. So as long as I'm setting first thing in the morning, I give it to God and I ask God with all those prayers, how do you want me to act today? How do you want me to um people that's I said the set aside prayer, the third step prayer, the seventh step prayer, the serenity prayer, all that, me doing all that made me all of a sudden I have a relationship with a power greater than myself. And it's awesome because before I wouldn't pause during the day. Now I pause. And another thing I realized that it is 100% my fault. You know,
Wow, have you come a long ways, girl?
Yeah, I was embarrassed when I finally realized that I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Not them. I'm the problem. And when they irritate me, it's how I respond to how I react to them. So yeah, I now know that this is a journey. You guys are gonna always see me, because I do get a lot out of this, out of us meeting together, you know. And I get emotional because I was when you said the person that think they're awesome. I was that awesome person, you couldn't touch me. I was that girl with I'm all that in a bag of chips, you know. So I'm glad that I'm thawing out.
Well, and today now you can realize that you truly are awesome. Thanks so much, Carolyn. Yeah,
Thank you.
you bet. You bet.
Thank
Debbie,
you.
please.
Hi, Debbie here in Florida, and I don't want to go on and on without I want to focus on a question. You both talked about, weekly sessions that you have. Are they posted anywhere? Either Joanne, and I've heard a lot about herbs, but
Yeah,
I've
you'll get some material from Nan, who is our administrator, and she'll make sure that number one, you're in our database, and number two, that you receive some information concerning my work as well as Joe's work. And you'll be getting that today or tomorrow.
Okay. And can I have 1 minute to say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this has been really good for me because I mean I came into AA when I was 28. I'm 69, but I did have a relapse and then also found out, that the food I was going to the sugar. So I and recently diagnosed with ADD. Oh my gosh,
There
and I
you
mean
go.
it, but I had that internal kind, and you're talking about power, and like first I was powerless, the alcohol, the food, and I know they talk about people, places, and things, but my to put in place of me being powerless over, I can speak if I know I have questions, but if I go to speak about my input in a meeting or knowledge, I go blank. If I'm attacked, I go blank. um and that can be very frustrating, especially at a meeting when I or in front of a group of people. So I've been trying to put that as, being powerless over, because I do believe I've been living in a survival state my whole life, you
Yeah, it
know.
sounds like fear, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what it is. I have been in a fear state my
yeah,
whole life.
yeah.
So, and I looked up this about character defects or moral failings, from the big book, The Defects, as outdated survival strategies for the nervous system once used to keep us safe. And that made perfect sense to me. I can like deal with it that way because, and I've had consequences of it for being that frozen lizard, but now it's just trying to come out of that. Anyway,
Well,
thank
I'm so glad that you're connected to this group and to Joe, myself, and there's a plethora of resources that will be very, very instrumental in your thawing out.
Yeah, and I'll just add, just this idea of the 12 steps, just keep what I started doing right from the very early introduction to 12 step was changing the word alcohol, right? Because I was coming in through a food fellowship. And so, well, why not? I also say I'm powerless over men because, I was acting funny. I was young and I was doing all sorts of funny things. And then what if I'm also powerless over this anxiety thing, right? I'm powerless over my mind going blank, right? So changing the words that my life becomes unmanageable. I don't speak up. I get in uncomfortable situations I can't get out of. I feel powerless. So, step one, I'm powerless over, and we change the word. Step two, there is a power that can help, of course. And I love the learning that the bucket can get bigger. So, I don't know where you are, Polly, but yes, there is a power. Step two, and it's in everything that we do. Can that power help with the mental state that has been affecting you your whole life? Of course. Because whatever it is you imagine, it's bigger. Because for me, it is the precious moments that I find throughout the day, and the reminder to pause and to breathe. So when I'm teaching breathing and you ask someone to breathe, they'll go like this and they'll raise their shoulders, right? But when I teach people to breathe, you don't see it up the top. I want you to breathe from the belly. So you breathe that beautiful deep breath. The belly breath releases that serotonin, which is why dose is what we crave. And if we find healthy ways of getting supporting our biology, we can pause and we can use the tools that you have. So in that meeting when you're shutting down, just see if you, okay, I'm meant to shut down right now and breathe. For me, I fumble. I totally go blank or I would blush. I haven't blushed. Nowadays it's, oh, I just saw someone. Lisa, so good to see you. I used to blush all the time. All the time. I don't know, that was a symptom. My hands would shake and I would blush. Right? Nowadays, I don't remember the last time I blushed. My hands still do shake though. And if you notice my hands shaking, my voice wobbles, I sometimes forget to breathe. right? And my mouth fills with saliva, and then I like suffocate on my saliva. What's going on, Herb? Not very pleasant stuff, but it's my body reacting. And just for today, maybe the world needed to see that. Maybe you all needed a bit of a laugh. That's okay. Right? Just for today, let go of the facade. Like, am I able to let go of the identity of the smooth operator, whatever my identity is? Just for today, could I open to a different identity? Could I open to a different possibility? And that's how we move from a perceived role to a real role. Today, I am the woman who shows up as I am.
Thank you, Joe. That was wonderful. That great conclusion, because that's the essence of the benefit and promise of emotional sobriety. We will show up being the best person that we can be today. Tomorrow might be better or not. Thanks very much. Joe, did you have any closing comments? I could end with the serenity prayer if you don't mind.
Yes, please. Just Adam mentioned something about the vision statement. I can't see people, but if you're still there, Adam, the vision statement, and I've been peppering today's talk with these vision statements because I wanted you to see this is the reason we do the transformation. So as the victim, I'm stuck. I can't move. I can't move. And so we look at the situation from a new perspective. It gives us power. It's not comfortable to see that I am the woman who is doing this to herself. That's not comfortable. But now I have somewhere to go, and that's the vision. So I pray and I send to you some vision statements and adopt them, use them, take them on board. Today, I am the woman who embraces recovery. That is a vision statement. I may not live up to it today, right now, but I have a vision to pull me in the direction that I need to go. Create a vision statement that can help you to pull yourself and your power, pull yourself forward. I am the woman who embraces recovery. I am the woman who shows up for difficult conversations. Okay? I am the woman who embraces self-care. These are visions for me. And create a vision for yourself moving forward. And the only way we can do this is by doing this transformation work. We have to see the false reality, the perceived role that I am stuck holding on to. And we have to then see a turnaround, a different perspective, a real role. Perhaps I was one thing and I see I could be another, and that leads to a vision of who I could become. I'm not there now, but I could become, I could grow. So I've been in recovery now a long time, and I am very grateful. I've been with Herb a long time, and I'm very grateful for him, and I hope that you too will have a journey growing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe, and also from me to everybody that joined us today. The Serenity Prayer is an interesting prayer. I think it is the essential prayer for emotional sobriety. When you really think about it, most of us, blah, 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 we just mouth words without understanding the words or the intention behind the words. Prayer is not about words, it's about intention. Think about the Serenity Prayer. We don't have any control. None, zero. Outside, inside. We have no control in the strictest sense of the word control. No control. We have influence. That's that free will that we have to make choices and to adjust to the outcomes of our choices. We have influence. This is what the Serenity Prayer is. God, grant me serenity to accept things I cannot change. courage to change things I can, that influence, and wisdom that comes from making mistakes and correcting them and learning from them. So we make less mistakes, less frequently, less gross mistakes, and take actions that are much more effective progressively over time, like that dimmer switch, moving from the shadows of darkness into the brightness of, as Bill calls it, the sunlight of the Spirit. Thanks, everybody, for your time today, and we'll see you again in 3 months. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you. That was
everyone.
awesome.